In this module, we will use Unreal Engine's Paper 2D system for creating sprites and sprite-based animations for our player character. Within the Paper 2D system, we will import sprites from a sprite sheet. We will be editing individual sprites in the sprite editor, and we will also be animating sprites in the flipbook editor. We'll begin by editing the cloned player character that we copied to our demo folder. So we'll open that up, and we're going to look at our viewport here. And let's see, let's switch to, we'll look at the front view, the lit mode. This shows you sort of how things are aligned with the camera and the actual sprite, which we're looking at here. If we click on the sprite component, we can see it's a source flipbook that's set to show an idle animation. So if we zoom in to the idle animation, we're going to open this up here. And we see that it uses a timeline-based system with some keyframes. The keyframes are set to use 7 different sprites, it looks like. We can see there's a frame rate set at the top of 7.5. And if we zoom in on the individual sprites, we can find them here. These are just individual sprite 2D textures, and they're just playing on the timeline. Okay, let's go back to our demo map. And we're going to organize our content a little bit here because we're going to be importing our own sprite sheet. So we're going to make a source folder to keep our original imported textures in. We'll also make one for sprites that we derive from the imported source textures. We can organize this a little bit more. And let's start, let's just start importing right here. So I prepared this player character PNG file. It has all the animations of the character we're going to use, and there's sort of an alpha channel in there. We'll see how that can be useful in a minute. Basically, the alpha channel surrounds all the characters, and it's all the white space you saw in that image. So if we go to apply Paper 2D texture settings, we can see that the preview becomes clear, so to speak. You can see the checkered background behind it. The area around the character has transparency. We'll close this texture tab and go back to our content browser. So we'll go here, and for sprite actions, we're going to look at how we can extract sprites automatically from this sprite sheet that we just pulled in. So when you go to extract sprites, automatically it's set to auto mode. And you can see a yellow liner on each sprite that it intends to pull out of the sprite sheet. But if you need to, you can also set a grid here. If you choose sprite extract mode to grid, you can set your cells in the X and Y and your cell height and width like that, if that's more useful to you. If you're creating tiles, that might be useful. But we're just going to go ahead and use the auto mode here. So we'll hit extract. And you can see the naming convention here says player character sprite 0, 1, 2, etc. That's a bit verbose for what we want to do, so we're going to delete this and try this again. So yeah, we'll just delete these sprites, and we'll go to right click and sprite actions, extract sprites again. And we're going to delete the sprite underscore and just keep the 0 there. So it should name them as player character 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So we hit extract and we can see, sure enough, it does. They're listed as player character underscore, then just the number. And if you set your sprite sheet up in the right way with your animations in a row, left to right, top to bottom, this way it makes it easier to grab your animations in the sequence that you need. So under the sprites directory, we'll create another directory for just our player character sprites because we will probably have more sprites as we develop this further. And for organizational purposes, we're going to Control-Shift grab all of these player character sprites, and we're going to move them out of the sprites directory into our new player character directory. And we'll move our original sprite texture sheet here to the source folder. Okay, so here we have all of our player character sprites again. And let's see, we're going to start by grabbing a few idle animation sprites. If we grab a few here, we create a flipbook here. This automatically assembles them into an animation for us. That will open up automatically in the flipbook editor. You can also right click and do paper 2D, paper flipbook to start a blank flipbook. But for our purposes, we're going to grab player character 3, 4, and 5 and create a flipbook that way. So it creates our flipbook, and we're going to name this anim idle. And if we look at it, it starts playing really fast because there's 15 frames per second. And we see here that each sprite is only playing for a frame run of 1, which is really fast. So we want to slow this down, but we're not going to go with changing the frames per second. So let me just pause this. Instead, if we drag the little handle here, we can change the frame run. And if you look on the right-hand side in the details pane, you can also change the frame run that way. So here we have 3, a frame run of 3 for each sprite in the flipbook animation. That should provide us a little smoother, a little slower animation. I'm going to move these around. So 4, 5, 3 looks a little better, but you can see his feet are kind of bouncing up and down here, which is a little odd. Let's see if we look at this. We're going to add a cross frame here to smooth this out a little bit. Let me look at this. We have 4, 5. So we'll copy 5 and we'll paste it after 3. That should give us the looping sequence that we're looking for. So that's a little smoother, but you can still see his feet bouncing up and down. And the reason behind that is the sort of pivot point of the sprite is not set where we want it to be set. So the problem here is actually this one, player character 4. That's the one whose feet are a little bit offset weirdly. So we'll save this, close this up for a second, and we're going to double click on this sprite, and this opens up the sprite editor, which we'll deal with a little more later. But the problem here is if you look at his pivot point, it's right in the center of his body. Pivot mode is set to center center. And generally we want all of our character sprites to be bottom center. So we'll set that to bottom center on the pivot mode. And let's see, that should be good. Yeah, bottom center. Okay, so we'll save that. So we want to set pretty much all of the character sprites, at least at this point, to the same pivot. But we don't have to open each one at a time and do that for every single sprite that we just extracted. So there's a handy feature in the content browser we can use to edit them all at once. So we're just going to select all of the character sprites like this. And we're going to right click, look for Asset Actions and the Property Matrix. Bulk Edit via Property Matrix. We're going to do this. So if we open this up and we go to Sprite category here, we can find our pivot mode and we want them all to be bottom center. And there's no saving here. That should automatically work for us. So we'll close this up. And now if we open up the sprites, we open up our animation, all the sprites should be fixed. So all 4 sprites are now set to bottom center so we can see his feet don't bounce around anymore. And now this anim idle flipbook is giving us a pretty solid idle animation that we can use for our default non-movement state.